So with that, let's talk about the future. I can't predict the future. You can't predict the future, but we can try. Kind of what makes it fun. So I thought it would be fun to just rattle off some of my predictions, the Solomonsters predictions for WWE coming up in the year 2015. 2014 was a big year for WWE for a lot of good reasons and a lot of bad reasons. A lot of shit happened this year in WWE. Batista came back after it was like a 3 or 4 year absence. I think 4 years he was gone for. He came back. Didn't exactly work out, I think, the way they had hoped his return would. But he came back, and Daniel Bryan, that whole story, the way it ended up culminating at WrestleMania, him winning the championship and then being sidelined pretty much the entire rest of the year with a neck injury. That was just awful. Talk about awful timing for somebody. The launch of the WWE Network, which has both its good and bad. The new television deal with NBC Universal, which, look, I mean, they're going to make a lot of money off this deal, but the deal was not what people were expecting, and it hit the stock very hard. So I think at the end of the day, that was kind of disappointing for them. The Shield breaking up, I mean, the Wyatt family, I guess you could say, them breaking up as well. Just so many different things happened in WWE this year. So what does 2015 hold? Is it going to be a better year for wrestling? Is it going to be a worse year? I would like to think that we would have a rebound year, because this overall I don't think was a very strong year in terms of business. I don't get the sense that the product was really hot. If anything, Raw, I think, took a turn for the worse. I think most weeks it's very, very difficult to sit through an episode of Monday Night Raw. I would love to sit here and tell you that in 2015 I predict Raw is going to get better, Raw is going to go back to 2 hours, but we know that's not going to happen. WrestleMania season, I would expect the show is going to be more exciting, and it'll be a lot easier to sit through week to week, but who the hell knows? So, with that being said, my predictions for WWE in 2015. John Cena, I predict, will not only tie Ric Flair's fake record of 16 title wins next year, which I think is inevitable. We all know Cena is tying the record. He's going to break the record. And I say fake number because it's actually more than 16 title wins, but 16 is the number they settled on. Even if you ask Ric Flair, he says it's more than 16. It might be as many as 23, depending on who you talk to. John Cena will not only tie the record, I predict he will, in fact, break the record and be a 17-time world champion before the year is over. Not a huge stretch. I'm sure there's a lot of people who probably feel the same way, but that is what I predict. I predict that all three members of The Shield, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, Seth Rollins, will be WWE champion at some point during the year. Dolph Ziggler, I predict, will also become WWE champion for the first time before the end of 2015, because you can only hold good talent down for so long, but his run will be brief. Do not expect a lengthy Dolph Ziggler title run. He's going to be the man. I'm not predicting that. I don't think Dolph Ziggler will ever be the man, but I do think he'll have the championship at some point next year. I predict that CM Punk will not fight in the UFC. And that could be for any number of reasons. He's going to get hurt. He won't be able to survive a training camp. And there are people who think that. There are people who think, hey, this guy's going to go do a camp wherever. You know, there's already rumors he may have picked a camp somewhere, and he's never going to make it through. Or his body will break down, or something will happen. Either that, or quite frankly, I could see a situation, because there have already been comments made by some members of the commission out in Vegas. And, I mean, look, you can have Punk fight somewhere other than Las Vegas, but there have been some murmurs that, you know, the commission may not allow him to fight until he fights somewhere else first and gets some experience under his belt. Whatever the reason is, I feel as though CM Punk will not end up fighting in the Octagon in 2015. I really do. I have this feeling he will not end up fighting next year. So that is my prediction. However, on the other hand, Brock Lesnar, I predict, will return to the UFC, and he will fight there in 2015. Lesnar will fight in the UFC before CM Punk ever does. That is my prediction. And I will be very sad, by the way, when Brock Lesnar does go back to UFC, because that means he will no longer be in WWE. The Heyman-Lesnar pairing will no longer grace us with their presence on Monday Night Raw, and that makes me very sad. I predict that Bully Ray will be a surprise entrant in the 30-man Royal Rumble match coming up next month. I predict that Randy Savage will be inducted, finally, at long last, into the WWE Hall of Fame. I predict that Daniel Bryan will return, and he will be back in time for WrestleMania. Hard to say who his opponent will be, but I got a feeling he's coming back and he'll make it back in time for Mania. Sting. Sting will obviously wrestle a match at WrestleMania next year. It looks like it'll be against Triple H. I still think there's an outside shot it could be Undertaker. Unless they go with the idea of a Sting versus Undertaker retirement match like I pitched last week, which Sting would lose, and then both men can ride off into the sunset, then it will not be Sting's final WWE match. It will not be his only match inside a WWE ring, despite what he has said about how he only wants to come back for one match. He only sees himself doing one match. Yeah, like Shawn Michaels, when he came back in 2002, I'm only doing the one match, and then 8 years later, he's having his retirement match. So, if Sting gets The Undertaker, which I still think there's a chance he could, then yes, I do think that will probably be it for Sting. However, if he does not get The Undertaker, if he gets Triple H or John Cena or anybody else, I think it will be Sting's first of several matches next year. Big Dave Batista. I mentioned that he came back this year after 4 years away. Didn't exactly get the kind of response that they were probably hoping he would. I predict that Batista, through all of his Hollywood success, and I'm so happy for the guy because I just think he's a good guy. I enjoy watching him as an actor and growing as an actor. I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Bond film. And frankly, he does not have any reason to come back to wrestling. My understanding when he came back, a lot of the reports were that he made the deal directly with Triple H, who's his buddy. It was a 2-year contract. Technically, I think Batista still is under contract to WWE, but they're just, allowing him. I'm sure there were things built into the contract where if Hollywood opportunities came up, then that would supersede the wrestling, and so they're letting him do his thing. But my understanding is he's still technically under contract through next year to them. And I think that he will be back one last time to get that singles match for the title that he was promised in storyline, but he never received. Remember, he won the Royal Rumble, which entitled him to a singles match for the championship of WrestleMania. He never got that one-on-one championship opportunity, and in storyline, that's why he left. He asked Triple H for it. Triple H said no, and he's like, adios, and he left. And that was back in, June? So I predict he will be back for that title shot, probably against Roman Reigns, and he will put Roman over. He will make Roman look strong. Unfortunately for WWE, though, when Batista comes back, it'll be as a heel, but the fans will end up cheering him this time. So the poor guy will be miscast again, and the fans will just fuck everything up for WWE. So that's my prediction with Batista. Predicted Adam Cole of Ring of Honor and PWG fame will be signed to a WWE developmental contract. I just think he's too good not to be. He did, I think, at least one kind of camp or tryout for WWE either this year or last year, and I guess they didn't pick him, and so he ended up signing a contract with Ring of Honor. But I just feel like he's like the prototypical guy that WWE looks for. Physique aside, I mean, his physique is fine. He's not this big jacked up dude that they might kind of look at and go, oh, we got something in this guy. He's not really a big guy. And if anything, maybe that would work against him. Aside from the size, though, he's got a good look. He's a great wrestler. He's very articulate, very well-spoken. He carries himself well. He is a company guy. I don't know why he isn't already under WWE, a developmental deal. I don't know why he's not on the main roster. I could say that about most of the guys in NXT right now. But I predict that next year he will be under a WWE developmental deal, and it'll be well-deserved. I look forward to seeing him there. Adrian Neville, Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Finn Balor, Hideo Itami, Charlotte, and Sasha Banks will all be called up from NXT to the main roster at some point during the year. Speaking of Sami Zayn, I think he's going to have an incredible series of matches once he does get called up with Cesaro that are intended not to elevate Cesaro, unfortunately, but more to elevate Zayn. I think Triple H, I think the people there know the kind of chemistry that Sami Zayn and Cesaro have. And if they're not doing anything with Cesaro, and I'd love to sit here and predict that next year, he'll be out of the doghouse and it's going to be his year, I don't feel it. I really don't. I hope they start to give him a push. I just don't see Cesaro getting to the level that he really deserves to be at in that company. I really do think his future is I don't know, back in Ring of Honor or in New Japan. I really think that in New Japan Pro Wrestling, which is really going through a boom period of their own right now, he would fit in with that style perfectly. and they've got a whole bunch of foreigners that are on that roster. AJ Styles, chief among them, who are doing very well. I think Cesaro, if and when he ends up over there, is going to do very well for himself. So I don't see this as being really more about getting Cesaro over. I see this as, okay, these two guys, not just on the indies, but even in NXT, had an incredible series of matches. If the goal is to get Sami Zayn over once he gets called up, I can't think of a better person on that roster right now that they could sacrifice and they can use in that role to make Sami look good than Cesaro. So I say they go back to that well, and we'll probably end up with another incredible series of matches between the two of those guys. I also think, and I'll say it again, I said this before, Finn Balor, okay, Prince Devitt, he's going to be huge. By WrestleMania 32, not next year, but the year after, maybe not in the main event, but he'll be in a big match on that show, let's put it that way. I think he's going to be one of those top guys in the next 2 or 3 years, and I think he finally gets that call up next year, and his ascent will begin at that point. Speaking of NXT, I predict that NXT is going to begin live touring outside of Florida next year. I don't know. I'm surprised it hasn't already happened. I think next year is the year it happens. They'll expand beyond just Florida. And look, I know they have house shows in the Florida area where they're barely drawing 200 people. I don't really know how hard they promote those shows. And the other key is they don't have television in Florida. So you might say, well, what sense does that make if you're going to start running NXT shows, let's say in Georgia, or New York or North Carolina? You know, how can you expect to draw more fans? I think that we're going to see the beginning of that, whether it's NXT exclusive or incorporating more NXT matches into the existing WWE house shows. I do think that NXT is going to expand its borders, so to speak, beyond just Florida, and that'll be the first, or I should say the next big step in making it a legit third brand. I think that's the goal that Triple H has for it. It's more than just developmental, and I think we're going to see that next year. The WWE Network, launched this year, has not had a great year. Nowhere close to 1 million subscribers, which is what they had, I think, promised the investors they would be at by the time this year was over. Not even close. I predict the WWE Network, it will continue to grow, but slowly. And by this time next year, okay, 12 months from now in December 2015, it will still be under 1.1 million monthly subscribers, is my prediction for the network. And that's including the UK. They have not yet launched in the UK. That's coming up hopefully in January. We don't yet know what form it will take. It could be like in Canada, where it's more of a normal, regular cable channel and not this over-the-top model that we have here in the States. So we don't know what form it's going to take in the UK, but I mean, I would think a year from now it will have already been launched for many, many months in the UK, and even including the UK, I still predict that overall, the total number of monthly subscribers a year from now, I'd like to think it will be over 1 million. I'll tell you what, it may not even be over 1 million, but I'm going to say it will absolutely not be over 1.1 million. It will be under that number, and that is far below where they need to be, I think, to break even on this network. So, not good news. Not good news for the network. And lastly here, speaking of the UK, one final prediction. I believe that WWE will make the announcement next year of a major event, finally, coming to the UK in 2016. It'll be a pay-per-view. I'm thinking SummerSlam. They're overdue for a big show overseas. And for all the reasons they may have had not to do it, the expense, the different time zone, pay-per-view now is going away. They are slowly but surely killing pay-per-view. It's on life support. By next year, it'll be dead. They're hoping that means that people will sign up for the network. It doesn't look like that's happening, so I don't really know what's going to happen there. You would think as people shift away from pay-per-view, they'll spend the $9.99 on the network, and that's just not happening. Instead, what's happening is people just are not buying the pay-per-views, and they're not seeing them at all because the numbers don't match up. Those people are not subscribing to the network, and that's not good. But the point is, with pay-per-view going away and everything now being on the network, they're free to do whatever they want. I mean, they could have a show tomorrow if they wanted to in the UK and have it as a live network special. And yeah, it'll cost them some money, but it's your own network. You can afford to, even as an experiment, go to the UK, go to Australia, and do something like that, and not just have, like they used to have the UK-only pay-per-views, one night only, Capital Carnage, Mayhem in Manchester. I'm talking about a legit, big-time pay-per-view, not WrestleMania. I don't see that happening. But I think SummerSlam. You could absolutely do SummerSlam in the UK, the first time since 1992, and make it a big deal. They're already locked in for Madison Square Garden next year, but I predict they'll make the announcement for 2016 that a big pay-per-view, probably SummerSlam, will be coming to the UK. That is my prediction. And why not? Why not? They're overdue for one. I think it'll make it feel special. I mean, look, here's the thing about these pay-per-views, okay? And a lot of you guys have said this to me, and I agree with you 100%. The most important thing is that they get their shit together with their storylines, okay, and creative. All this other stuff really is trivial compared to that, okay? If they have great creative and we're into the product and it's fun and it's exciting, who gives a fuck what color the ropes are, what the stage looks like, okay? All of that stuff becomes trivial, but it does matter. To some degree, it does matter. It can help make the show feel fresher. One thing they've gotten away from is giving their pay-per-view events a special feel. The set is the exact same set they use for Raw and SmackDown. It looks no different. There's no props. There's no nothing. It just looks boring. There is nothing to differentiate, let's say, SummerSlam from Monday Night Raw, or to differentiate SummerSlam from Extreme Rules. And I think at least for some of the bigger pay-per-views during the year, like the Royal Rumble, like SummerSlam, they already have a big set for WrestleMania. We could put that on the side. What about all these other shows? Shouldn't they look different? Shouldn't they have a special feel to them? Shouldn't you change things up a little bit for it? I think by going to the UK or going overseas and having a special show, that would go a long way to making the show feel different. Hey, this is not just another SummerSlam. This is not just another pay-per-view. This is a big deal. And I think to the fans in the UK, it would be a big deal. I can't tell you how many emails I've gotten from people asking me, how come they don't come here for a show? How come they don't come here? I don't know. Ask them. I'm with you. I feel for you guys. I hope they do it, and I think they will. With this network, I think it makes it a lot more likely, and I think we're going to get that big announcement next year. So those are my predictions for WWE in 2015. Some are not really... I'm not taking a big leap on some of them, and some of them I am, like saying that Punk will not fight in UFC. I may look bad for predicting that a year from now, but we'll see.